The fluorescent lights in family courtroom 3B hum with a frequency that makes my temples ache. I've been here 4 times now. Across the aisle, Helena sits with her spine straight, chin lifted just enough to catch the light favorably. Her lawyer, a woman named Ortiz with a voice trained for sympathy, leans close to whisper something, and Helena nods, touches her collarbone in that gesture I used to find elegant. Now I recognize it as performance. Her mother sits 3 rows back, arms crossed, face set in righteous vindication. She's been waiting 2 years for this moment, for the court to confirm what she's told everyone in our old neighborhood, that I'm the kind of man who abandons his responsibilities. Judge Kellerman has the look of someone who's heard every variation of this story. He reads through the motion without expression, occasionally glancing up at Helena, then at me, then back to his papers. I don't blame him for the assumption. The narrative has been carefully constructed. Absent father, unpaid support, a woman forced to raise a child alone. Ortiz speaks with practiced cadence about hardship and betrayal, about a man who refuses to acknowledge his own daughter. Helena dabs at her eyes with a tissue, though I notice her mascara remains perfect. The judge nods along, his pen making notes I can't see. I haven't spoken yet. My attorney, a practical man named Vincent who works out of a strip mall office, told me to stay quiet until called. So I sit with my hands folded over the manila envelope, feeling the weight of the document inside. The official seal is raised enough that I can trace it with my thumb. Superior Diagnostics Laboratory. Results enclosed. Helena's confidence fills the room like perfume. She believes this is a formality, one more hearing where she performs, and I concede. She's counting on my silence being surrender. The clerk calls for closing statements. Ortiz stands, smoothing her blazer, and delivers a final plea about accountability and the child's welfare. Helena's mother leans forward, nodding. Vincent speaks briefly, plain-spoken, requesting the court review the enclosed DNA analysis before rendering judgment. Judge Kellerman frowns slightly, reaches for the envelope. I watch his hands, bureaucratic, unhurried, as he breaks the seal. Helena shifts in her seat, that faint smirk still present. She probably thinks this is theater, something her lawyer suggested to waste time. The judge reads. His expression doesn't change immediately, but his eyes pause, move back to the top of page, read again. The courtroom has that particular stillness that comes before everything breaks. Helena's smirk begins to fade at the edges. Her mother sits back slightly. I don't move. I stop being angry somewhere around month 8 of this process. Now I'm only exact, only waiting for the truth to do what truth does when it finally enters a room that's been filled with smoke. Judge Kellerman looks up, first at Helena, then at me. He sets the document down carefully, clears his throat once, and I remember exactly how this started. 2 years ago, in a bedroom I no longer live in, holding my phone with a photograph on the screen that changed the temperature of my entire life. It started with her phone, not the device itself, but the way she held it. Angled away, screen tilted toward her chest, thumbs moving in rapid conversation with someone who made her smile in a way I hadn't seen in months. This was March, 2 years before the courtroom. We were sitting on the couch watching something neither of us cared about, and when I asked who she was texting, Helena said, "Just Bree," without looking up. But Bree was her college roommate who'd moved to Portland 3 years ago, and Helena had never been good at hiding the specific kind of excitement that comes from new attention. I didn't push. I've never been the kind of man who demands to see phones or interrogates about passwords. I just noticed the way you notice a door left open that should be closed. The pregnancy announcement came 6 weeks later, right after I mentioned the job offer in Cleveland. I'd been chosen to lead a regional expansion. Better pay, better title, a chance to finally get ahead of our debt. Helena had always talked about wanting to leave our town, about starting fresh somewhere with actual seasons and culture. But when I told her about Cleveland, she went quiet for 3 days. Then she came into the kitchen one morning holding a plastic test stick, tears already forming, and said we needed to stay close to her mother now. The timing felt like a door slamming shut, but I told myself I was being paranoid. We'd been trying for a baby. This was supposed to be good news. I turned down Cleveland. We stayed. Her phone habits continued, more private, more frequent. Her friends, women I'd known for years through backyard barbecues and birthday dinners, stopped making eye contact when I picked up takeout at places we used to go together. I felt the social network rewiring around me, conversations ending when I entered rooms. Helena's mother began dropping by unannounced, her visits punctuated by long looks and careful questions about my plans, my commitment, whether I understood what it meant to be a father. I said all the right things. I meant them, but something underneath our life together had shifted, like foundations settling in ways you can't see until cracks appear in the walls. Lily was born in January. I was there, held Helena's hand, cut the cord, cried when they placed that small, red, furious creature on Helena's chest. For 3 weeks, everything else dissolved into mechanics of survival, diapers, bottles, the strange mathematics of sleep deprivation. But then visitors started coming, and I began hearing the comments. Helena's aunt, she has her mother's eyes, doesn't she? A neighbor. Funny, I don't see much of you in her. Helena's mother, holding Lily with proprietary certainty. She's all Helena's side of the family. I laughed these off, made jokes about recessive genes, about how babies change. But at night, watching Lily sleep in her bassinet, I'd search her face for some evidence of myself and find only questions. The photograph arrived in August. My friend Colin, a guy I'd known since high school, someone with no agenda beyond uncomfortable honesty, asked to meet me for coffee. He looked sick when he sat down, like he'd been arguing with himself about whether to come at all. He slid his phone across the table, without saying anything. The image was from Helena's Instagram, not her main account, but a secondary one I didn't know existed. She was at a bar I recognized, pressed close to the man I didn't. His hand was on her waist. Her smile was unguarded, genuine, the kind of smile that doesn't lie. The date stamp read April 14th, exactly 9 months before Lily was born. I looked at the photo once, memorized a man's face, narrow jaw, dark beard, the confident posture of someone who'd never had to question whether he belonged somewhere, and slid the phone back to Colin. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. The math was simple, brutal, complete. Colin started to apologize, started to say something about not knowing if he should have shown me, but I told him it was fine, paid for both coffees, and drove home in silence. That night, Helena asked why I was so quiet. I told her I was tired. She accepted this without curiosity and went back to scrolling through her phone, that same private smile flickering across her face. I went to the guest bathroom, closed the door, and stood there for 20 minutes, hands braced against the sink, watching my reflection breathe. I moved into the guest room that weekend. Helena asked why, her voice carefully neutral, performing concern without actually extending it. I told her I was snoring, that she needed better sleep while managing the baby, that it made sense to divide the nights. She accepted this with visible relief. No protest, no attempt to pull me back. The distance I created, she welcomed. That told me everything I needed to know about how long she'd been waiting for permission to stop pretending. The house became a choreographed space. I woke at 5:30, made coffee, left hers in the pot. I showered, dressed, went to work. Evenings, I came home to find her in the living room with Lily, her mother often present, the two of them creating a domestic tableau that had no room for me in its composition. I'd eat dinner standing at the kitchen counter, wash my plate, then retreat upstairs to the guest room where I'd set up a small desk and filing system. Helena's mother would watch me move through the house with an expression somewhere between contempt and satisfaction, as if my withdrawal proved something she'd been saying all along. I didn't stop caring for Lily. That was important to me. Some core principle I couldn't articulate, but refused to compromise. I still changed diapers when Helena handed her to me, still walked the floor at 2 a.m. when crying echoed through the walls, still made faces that earned those uncontrolled infant smiles. Love shouldn't be collateral damage in adult failures. Whatever Helena had done, whatever this child represented in terms of deception, Lily herself was innocent. But each time I held her, I searched her features with forensic attention. The slope of her nose, the shape of her ears, the color bleeding into her eyes as they shifted from newborn blue to something more permanent. I found no evidence of myself, only mounting confirmation of what I already knew. Helena tried to provoke me exactly once. It was October, a Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen organizing receipts, building my archive of every grocery run, every utility payment, every dollar spent maintaining our shared life. She came in and asked, with theatrical weariness, when I was planning to rejoin the family. The phrasing was careful, designed for an audience. I looked up from my spreadsheet and said, "I'm right here." She waited for more, an accusation, an argument, some emotional explosion she could use as evidence. I gave her nothing. She left the kitchen frustrated, and I heard her on the phone minutes later, voice low and urgent, telling someone how impossible I'd become. The neighbors noticed. Our street was the kind where people knew each other's business through accumulated observation and careful gossip. I'd see them pause their lawn mowing when I pulled into the driveway, watch them exchange glances when Helena loaded Lily into the car for another visit to her mother's house. Helena moved faster than truth. Her version spread to the neighborhood like groundwater, seeping into every conversation I wasn't part of. I became the absent father, the cold husband, the man who couldn't handle the responsibility of parenthood. I heard fragments at the hardware store, at the gas station, in the careful way people stopped inviting me to block parties. I let her have the narrative. Correction would come, but would come through channels that mattered, not through defending myself to people who'd already chosen their sympathies. At night, in the guest room with the door closed, I learned the architecture of family law. I read statutes until my eyes burned, learned the difference between legal presumption and biological fact, understood that marriage creates automatic paternity regardless of genetics. I discovered that men pay for children who aren't theirs because courts prioritize the child's welfare over the father's truth. I learned the word disestablishment and its narrow legal requirements. I studied precedent, read case law, understood that I needed more than suspicion. I needed documentation, timeline, proof that would survive judicial skepticism. I ordered a paternity test kit in November. It arrived in discreet packaging. I swabbed Lily's cheek during a diaper change, swabbed my own, sealed everything according to instructions, and then stopped. I didn't mail it. Not yet. The timing had to be right, the context strategic. If I revealed this privately, Helena could prepare, could construct explanations, could find ways to make my discovery seem like aggression rather than defense. So I put the sealed kit in my desk drawer and waited. Helena filed for sole custody in February. Her lawyer, Ortiz, whom she'd somehow afforded despite claiming financial hardship, submitted a motion painting me as emotionally absent and financially withholding. The petition requested full custody and retroactive child support going back to Lily's birth. I read the filing in my car outside the courthouse, hand steady, breathing controlled. Every accusation was crafted to place me on the defensive, to make me react, to create the conflict she needed to justify her narrative. I called Vincent that afternoon. He was a family attorney who advertised on bus benches, worked alone, charged reasonable rates. When I explained what I needed, he listened without judgment and said, "This will take time and it won't be easy, but if you're certain about the test, we can build something solid." I told him I was certain. He said, "Then let's be patient and precise." I marked a hearing date on my wall calendar with a single red line and locked the paternity kit in my desk drawer, waiting for the moment when truth would finally have its venue. Vincent's office sat between a nail salon and a tax preparation service in a strip mall off Route 9. The waiting room had 3 chairs and a water cooler that hummed louder than the air conditioning. Our first real meeting lasted 2 hours. He spread my documentation across his desk, Bank statements, text message logs, photographs. The timeline I had constructed showing Helena's movements in the months before Lily's conception. He studied everything with the methodical attention of someone who'd seen 1,000 variations of the same story and knew which details would survive judicial scrutiny. "The test itself isn't enough," he said, tapping the sealed paternity kit I brought. "Courts see DNA evidence as nuclear. It destroys everything around it, including relationships with children who've bonded with presumed fathers. Judges don't like deploying it unless there's surrounding context that justifies a disruption." He looked at me over his reading glasses. "We need to show pattern, opportunity, and your good faith efforts to maintain the relationship despite suspicions. That's what separates you from men who abandon kids and then claim innocence. You stayed. You supported. You paid. That matters." We filed a counter motion requesting court-ordered paternity testing as part of the custody proceedings. The language was careful, not accusatory, but necessary for equitable resolution of support obligations. Vincent explained that by requesting it through the court rather than doing it privately, we created official record and prevented Helena from claiming the results were fabricated or obtained improperly. "She'll have to consent or look like she's hiding something," he said. "Either way, we get the answer in a forum that carries legal weight." Helena's response came 3 weeks later. Ortiz filed an objection calling the request a transparent attempt to evade parental responsibility through baseless insinuation. The language dripped with moral outrage, painting me as a man so desperate to avoid child support that I'd manufactured doubt about my own daughter's paternity. They included affidavits from Helena's mother and 2 friends attesting to my increasing emotional distance and refusal to engage in family life. The narrative was consistent, coordinated, effective. I read it twice and felt nothing except recognition. This was exactly the strategy one would have expected. The court scheduled a hearing for May. In the months between, I maintained my routine with deliberate precision. I documented every interaction, every time I offered to watch Lily and was refused, every support payment made on time, every attempt at co-parenting that met resistance. Vincent had told me, "Judges appreciate patterns. They're drowning in cases where everyone claims the moral high ground. Show them data, not emotion." So I became a man made of receipts and timestamps, building an architecture of evidence that needed no voice to speak. Helena's confidence grew in proportion to my silence. She bought a new car, a white Lexus SUV that appeared in the driveway one morning, gleaming and improbable given her claimed financial distress. Her social media exploded with posts about freedom and new beginnings, photographs of her and Lily at restaurants I couldn't afford, captions about finally living authentically. The boyfriend from the photograph, his name was Troy, I'd learned, worked in commercial real estate, began appearing in her post too, always carefully cropped so only his arm or shoulder showed, maintaining plausible deniability while broadcasting the relationship to everyone watching. Her mother became bolder. She began parking in my spot in the driveway, forcing me to park on the street. She'd answer the door when I came home, telling me Helena and Lily were resting or busy, creating barriers in my own house. I never argued. I'd nod, go upstairs, and add the incident to my log. Vincent reviewed these entries during our weekly calls and said, "Good. This shows a pattern of alienation. Keep documenting." The preliminary hearing in March went exactly as expected. Judge Kellerman reviewed the motions with visible fatigue, listened to Ortiz's passionate defense of Helena's character, and granted her temporary full custody pending resolution of the paternity question. I sat through this without reaction. Vincent had warned me, "We'll lose the early rounds." Judges default to maintaining the status quo until evidence forces their hand. Stay calm. We're building toward the moment that matters. The court order for DNA testing came in April. I watched Helena's face when Ortiz showed her the ruling. A flicker of something crossed her features. Too quick to name, but unmistakable. Then she recovered, laughed, and said loud enough for me to hear, "Fine. Let's prove it. Let's end this circus." Her mother joined the laughter, and they left the courthouse together arm in arm. performing victory for the handful of people in the hallway. I went home and opened my desk drawer. The original paternity kit sat there alongside 6 months of documentation, phone records subpoenaed through discovery, credit card statements showing charges to hotels I'd never visited, social media archives preserved before they could be deleted. I pulled out the court order and placed it on top of everything else. The official testing would happen in 2 weeks at a certified facility. Results would go directly to the court. I marked the final hearing date on my calendar, June 14th, a Friday. I drew the red line slowly, precisely, then closed the drawer and sat in the quiet guest room listening to Helena laugh downstairs about something on her phone, the sound carrying up through the walls like smoke before fire. The morning of June 14th arrives with cloudless sky and humidity that makes my shirt stick to my back before I finish my coffee. I dress in the gray suit Vincent recommended. Professional but not expensive, the kind of thing that reads as responsible rather than performative. Helena is already gone when I come downstairs. She's staying at her mother's house now, has been since April, taking most of the furniture and all of the moral certainty with her. The house echoes when I walk through it, each room stripped to its essential geometry. I arrive at the courthouse 40 minutes early. Vincent is already there, sitting on the bench outside courtroom 3B with his briefcase open on his lap, reviewing notes he's probably read 100 times. He looks up when I approach, nods once, and says, "Remember, no matter what happens in there, no reaction. Let the document do the work." I tell him I understand. We sit together in silence, watching other families cycle through their own private disasters, everyone holding folders that contain the paperwork of broken lives. Helena arrives at 8:55 with Ortiz and her mother. She's wearing a navy dress that suggests both professionalism and vulnerability, her hair pulled back in a way that makes her look younger. Her mother carries Lily, who's wearing something pink and frilly that I've never seen before. They pass within 10 feet of me without acknowledgement, and I watch Helena's spine. Perfectly straight, shoulders back, the posture of someone who's never doubted the outcome of anything. Her mother whispers something that makes Helena smile, that same controlled smile I saw across the courtroom aisle months ago. They believe this is formality, the last procedural step before I'm legally bound to pay for another man's child while being denied access to her. They believe the narrative they constructed has weight enough to survive contact with fact. We file into the courtroom at 9. Judge Kellerman is already at the bench, looking more tired than I remember, the accumulation of other people's misery visible in the lines around his eyes. The clerk calls the case, Helena Brennan versus James Brennan, custody and support determination. Ortiz rises first, begins her closing argument with practiced sympathy. She speaks about the sanctity of the father-child bond, about how biological paternity should be assumed within marriage, about how requesting DNA testing represents a fundamental failure of faith and commitment. Her voice carries genuine emotion, and I wonder if she actually believes what she's saying or if this is simply what effective advocacy sounds like. Helena sits with her hands folded in her lap, occasionally touching that tissue to the corner of her eye. Her mother leans forward in the gallery, radiating vindication. They built this moment carefully. Months of social preparation, narrative construction, the careful architecture of victimhood that positions Helena as the wrong party regardless of what the test reveals. Even if the DNA excludes me, they've crafted a story where I'm still the villain for having doubted, for having failed to accept paternity on faith alone. Vincent's closing is brief, almost mechanical. He simply requests the court review the DNA analysis results before rendering judgment on custody and support. He doesn't argue, doesn't appeal to emotion, doesn't try to compete with Ortiz's performance. He just points to the envelope on the judge's desk, official seal intact, laboratory letterhead visible through the transparent window. Judge Kellerman nods, reaches for it with the same bureaucratic patience he's shown through every hearing. I watch his hands break the seal, unfold the trifold document, begin reading from the top. The courtroom has that particular quality of silence that exists in the moment before knowledge becomes public. Helena's smirk remains fixed, confident. Her mother's arms are crossed in satisfaction. Ortiz reviews her notes, already preparing for the victory lap she expects to take. I sit with my hands folded over the empty space where my folder used to be, breathing slowly, feeling nothing except the strange lightness that comes from knowing you're about to stop carrying weight you never should have lifted. Judge Kellerman's eyes pause on the page. He frowns, not dramatically, just a small contraction of someone encountering information that doesn't match expectation. He goes back to the top, reads again more slowly. His expression shifts in increments too subtle for most people to notice, but I've been watching judges long enough to recognize the moment when certainty cracks. He sets the document down carefully, removes his glasses, and the temperature in the courtroom drops 5 degrees. The DNA analysis, he says, voice flat and official, conclusively excludes the petitioner, James Brennan, as the biological father of the minor child. The words land like stones in water, initial impact, then spreading ripples. Someone in the gallery gasps. Ortiz's head snaps up from her notes, mouth opening without sound. Helena's smirk doesn't disappear immediately. It takes 3 full seconds for her face to process what her ears have heard, for performance to fracture and reveal the calculation underneath. Her mother goes rigid, tissue frozen halfway to her face. The whole careful construction they built over 2 years begins collapsing in real time. Judge Kellerman continues reading from the report, his voice taking on an edge I haven't heard before. The probability of paternity is 0%. The alleged father is excluded as the biological parent with certainty exceeding 99.9999%. He looks up, first at Helena, then at me. Mrs. Brennan, did you have reason to believe Mr. Brennan was not the biological father when you filed for child support? Ortiz tries to recover, standing quickly, asking for a moment to consult with her client. But Helena isn't looking at her lawyer. She's looking at me for the first time in months with something other than calculated performance. Actual disbelief, the stunned recognition that the man she'd written off as broken and defeated had been building something in silence. Her mother reaches forward, grips her shoulder, whispers urgently. The gallery has erupted in whispers. Strangers narrating this collapse to each other in real time. Judge Kellerman raises his hand for silence. I'm ordering an immediate stay on all child support obligations. Custody arrangements will revert to standard visitation pending further review. Additionally, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation into possible fraud. He looks at Helena directly now, judicial sympathy completely absent. You may wish to consult with your attorney about your exposure here. I don't speak. I don't smile. I don't perform victory. I simply gather the few papers in front of me, copies of the court order, Vincent's contact information, the receipt for the DNA test that started all of this. Vincent touches my elbow, guides me toward the aisle. As we pass Helena's bench, I can feel her staring, but I don't turn. There's nothing to say. The truth has said everything that needed saying, in the only voice that carries authority in rooms like this. We walk out into the hallway where morning light streams through tall windows. Vincent shakes my hand, tells me he'll handle the follow-up paperwork, reminds me to document any contact Helena attempts. I thank him, but the words feel inadequate for what he's helped me survive. He seemed to understand, just nods and walks back toward his office in the strip mall on Route 9. I stand in the courthouse lobby for a moment, watching people move through their own disasters, and realize I'm not angry anymore. I haven't been for months. What I feel is something closer to completion, the specific relief that comes when a weight you've carried finally finds the ground. For months pass like water finding level. The house sells in August. Split proceeds, clean break. No drama left to perform. Helena moves 2 towns over with Troy, the man from the photograph who turns out to be exactly what he looked like. Confident, uncomplicated, unburdened by the need for truth. I hear through mutual acquaintances that they're engaged, that Lily calls him daddy now, that Helena tells people I was never really involved anyway. I don't correct these stories. Let her have whatever narrative makes the future possible. The district attorney's office declines to prosecute. Insufficient evidence of intent to defraud, they say. Too difficult to prove she knew with certainty that I wasn't the father. Vincent warned me this would happen. Fraud requires provable knowledge, and Helena can claim she simply wasn't sure, that the timing was ambiguous, that she believed what she needed to believe. The legal system has its limits. I've learned to accept them. I still send gifts for Lily. Not often, birthdays, Christmas, the occasional book or toy that seems right for her age. I don't do this out of obligation or because the court requires it. I do it because I held her at 2 a.m. when she couldn't sleep, because I changed diapers and made bottles and walked circles around the living room singing songs I didn't know I remembered. DNA doesn't erase those early months when love was simpler than genetics. She won't remember me, probably, but I'll remember her. Not as a child who wasn't mine, but as someone I cared for before I knew to ask questions. I'm sitting in a diner on a Tuesday morning in October when someone I half recognize from the old neighborhood approaches my booth. He stands there awkwardly, coffee cup in hand, and finally asks how I managed to stay so calm through everything, through all those months when everyone assumed the worst. I look up from my eggs and consider the question honestly. The answer isn't about strategy or restraint or some noble commitment to procedure. It's simpler than that. Because the truth always arrives on its own schedule, I tell him, you just have to wait for it. He nods like this means something, thanks me, returns to his table. I finish my breakfast watching morning light spill through the diner windows, that particular quality of autumn sun that makes ordinary things look clarified. The waitress refills my coffee without asking. Someone's playing old country songs on the jukebox. Something about roads and leaving and starting over. I pay my check, leave a decent tip, and walk out into air that smells like with smoke and changing seasons. The world didn't explode. It simply corrected itself, the way truth always does when given enough time and the right venue. I get in my car and drive toward whatever comes next, lighter now, cleaner, free of weight I should never have carried in the first place.